things are going to break here?
Yeah, the tiebreakers are going to be interesting in this tournament. This is a mid-sized legacy tournament, but there were a lot of draws early in the tournament. So we have 3 21-pointers, whereas usually we'll have 4, maybe even 5. But because there were so many draws early, that led to fewer undefeated players at the end of the tournament. We have quite a few 18-pointers, Kennen Haas being one of them. And it appears as if we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 18-pointers, all of whom are fighting for those top 8 slots.
Yeah, we're the last round before top 8 here, so with the win here from Kennen, maybe he's able to draw in, maybe not. We'll see how things, again, how they break here. But right now, he's up against what looks to be a pretty difficult matchup in Blade Miracles. Pretty stock list, honestly. You've got your counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top block. There's some Spell Pierces, Force of Wills, Jaces, Creatures of Vendilion Click, and Venser to go along with the main deck Caracas to be able to pick that up. And of course, you're going to find Terminus, which isn't going to have a great effect in this match, and Entreat the Angels. So a lot of things going on here.
Yeah, crucially for Max, he does have those 2 copies of Venser Shaper Savant, which is going to be able to bounce the 2020 Jerry Thompson token. And also, Terminus does put the Undestructible token on the bottom of the library, so if he's able to set it up, he's going to be able to get rid of the 2020 that way, if Kennen is even able to combo off.
We'll see a Sensei's Divining Top to start the show here. Yep. There's a Bayou. Now, a lot of Kennen's tools in this matchup aren't going to be that great. I think that's the issue here. It's also very tough for him to break from the counterbalance lock, but, you know, a lot of tools that he uses to great effect, Small Pox, Punishing Fire Engine to keep control of creatures, Nether Spirit, not really going to play a huge role here. You know, we'll see if he's able to actually cobble together the Dark Depths combo. The problem with that, of course, is that Swords of Plowshares does exist, as does Venser Shaper Savant. They can keep that in check, so that's not a free win either here.
Max Ansbro plays a fetch land as his second land. He does have a Brainstorm in his hand if he chooses to use it at the end of Kennen's turn. Kennen uses his fetch land to be able to play.
It's okay, Faithless
Looting. Appears
Looting.
To be Faithless Looting. In response, Max is going to use his Sensei's Divining Top that he played on the first turn. Finds himself 2 copies of Counterbalance as well as Swords to Plowshares. He allows Kennen to use the Faithless Looting.
If we're Kennen in this matchup, you know, you want to get a Loam Engine online. I think that's step 1, but, you know, a lot of what he can do, you know, kind of Loam Lock people with Wasteland, not really going to happen in this particular matchup. 4 islands, 2 plains as far as the basics go, and then Max can leave up fetch lands, so being able to really mana screw someone, which is something that Jund Depths can do a really nice job of, he's not going to be able to do here, unfortunately. You know, again, Faithless Looting will be a different card drawing engine, but he really needs to just find a Loam at this point. That's where things get started.
Kennen did find a Mox Diamond, but elected to not use it on his turn, instead passing back to Max. Max played out a Caracas. Like the way I said that?
Caracas.
Yeah. Which Kennen can't be too happy to see on the opposing side of the board. Just playing out a naked Caracas to be able to deal with anything that he tries to make at end of turn with Thespian Stage. And there is Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top with 1 colorless mana.
Yeah, this is the real problem.
Be able to use.
Yeah, this is the biggest problem here because the Counterbalance lock is something that he's not going to be able to really break out of in game 1. You know, again, there's Life from the Loam, which can just get countered every single time. You mentioned Caracas, the fact that it can bounce the Merit Lage token. So, you know, first he's going to have to start by Wastelanding the Caracas and then go from there. You know, it's going to be a lot of draw steps, actually, that matter here for Kennen. And you see right now, he's going to probably respond with an Entomb.
Yeah, the best way that Kennen probably has to combat the top and counterbalance draw might be to just go get Nether Spirit and hope that Max doesn't have a Swords to Plowshares.
Boy,
that's pretty, that's a thin line.
Yeah, that's hoping that he doesn't draw a Swords or a Terminus to be miracled, or never is able to, you know, cast Entreat the Angels.
It's just not a good spot for Kennen. What he does like to do is go get the Life from the Loam, but if Max is able to float a 2 on top of his deck, that Life from the Loam is never going to be able to come back.
And now he knows that he needs to just find that. Now, to be fair, he does have to Entomb in response to the counterbalance, because if not, then Entomb will get countered by Sensei's Divining Top going on top of the deck. So Max did let that resolve.
The Cold Snap enchantment resolves, and he sets the combo off to his right, keeping it safe over there. He also has 2 copies of Supreme Verdict, does Max, in his hand, of which he has 2 in the main deck as well.
Yeah, fortunately for Kennen, you know, that card's not very good. He's going to dredge here. Liliana, Mox Diamond, and an Entomb. So 3 spells are going to go to the graveyard. We'll see if Loam's going to resolve here, but well, it looks like we see a Wasteland. This could get a little more interesting.
Wasteland will help. It's a good place to start. He's going to float the colorless to the top of his library, and then Kennen's going to enter his attack step to be able to make...
Well, he's spinning the top right now.
Oh, he's just spinning it right now? Okay. Max does not find a whole lot of useful stuff on top. He finds a 1-drop and 2 lands. And there goes the Caracas. So step 1 complete. Kennen is able to resolve some number of spells this turn. Probably testing the waters with whatever he deems to be the least important spell in his hand. Or he could just go for the Gusto and cast the Smallpox here, which I think would be quite good against Max's current hand.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't love the idea of wanting to do that. He's going to set himself back a land drop. Yeah, he'll set Max back 1, but Max is the one that has the Sensei's Divine top and can control his draw step. So that is kind of a Hail Mary type attempt for things to break his way. And it's not like he can take advantage of doing that either. You know, let's say Smallpox does resolve and Max doesn't have lands on top of his deck. It's not like Kennen has any pressure to, you know, really punish him for that. And it's not like he can just keep wastelanding him either. So, you know, I think it starts with resolving Loam and just getting that engine online and maybe seeing where he goes from there. I do not like the idea of casting a Smallpox and just crossing your fingers, but we'll see. It's going to be a Loam. Yep.
Kennen was in the tank there for a little bit, deciding how he wanted to proceed, being very careful about how he wants to go. Among the lands returned to his hand was a Dark Depths.
Yep. So, again, this is the initial steps. Now, looking at the deck list here from Max, he only has 2 swords in his deck. The 2 copies of Supreme Verdict, not really going to matter against an end-of-turn Dark Depths. 3 copies of Terminus, they certainly will. The Jaces here that can take care of creatures, those won't. So basically 5 cards, and then you add in the 2 Vensers. That makes it 7. So if Kennen does try to cobble together a Dark Depths token, it actually could be good to go. But again, it's going to take a little bit of luck.
Absolutely. Max is probably not ever going to be able to cast the Jace, the Mind Sculptor, either. Because he's going to have to keep up a bunch of mana to be able to counter spells. It's going to be a couple turns before Jace is going to be a safe play.
Yeah, I think, you know, chances are he won't want to cast it just when he plays, you know, when he has 4 mana. You're going to see a Smallpox he cast here. This is a little bit interesting.
Yep, Smallpox with 1 mana up. Max is going to see what he can do here. He's going to cast Brainstorm in response with 4 cards in hand.
Yeah, Brainstorm allows him to manipulate his library. He draws 3 cards, he puts 2 back. He can just put a 2 back on top of his deck to make sure that he can counter this. If not, he just puts 2 cards back, then sacrifices the fetch land, then can spin the top and look for a 2 that way. So by brainstorming here, not only does he get to put some garbage away, but he can also put a 2 on top, and then if he wants to keep the 2 that he draws, that's perfectly fine as well.
Now, I could be mistaken, but I don't think that there's a 2 in that pile. I saw Entreat the Angels, a pair of Supreme Verdicts, and a Flusterstorm.
Yeah, there's nothing too exciting going on over here for Max. You see he's going to put 2 cards back. The big question is how much, again, does he actually care about Smallpox, because he does have a land in his hand. And he's going to cast a Flusterstorm.
Storm is 3, which is going to counter the Smallpox. Kennen got a card out of Max's hand, so he did have to waste a resource to be able to get rid of the Smallpox from the stack, but Max is going to be able to untap and play a 4th land.
And it looks like he's sacrificing both of his lands, and looks like he's just going to go for a Jace right now. So this will give Kennen a small window to actually do some things here. Again, it's just kind of this window that I don't think he's going to get the opportunity to really take advantage. Now, this is really interesting because this is an Entomb in response to both fetch lands being sacrificed. A little bit sloppy here by Max. If he did it one at a time, he wouldn't get himself into trouble. But what he's actually done, and if you call a judge over, they would tell you this, is that he's held priority on sacrificing both of the fetch lands. So they're both on the stack at once. And so now he's actually going to have to lose the top. So Entomb's going to get countered by the Sensei's Divining top, and now if he wants to search out the lands, he has to lose the top, so Kennen is basically breaking himself out of the lock.
Right. Unfortunately for Kennen, Max does have the other top in his hand, as we mentioned earlier, so he was able to find another copy of it with his Brainstorm. Max finds a basic island and a basic plains. These are some nice basics, if I do say so myself.
Not so bad if you like those kind of basics.
Sure. Jace the Mind Sculptor enters the battlefield. And that is going to possibly start going to work on the Fate Seal, although maybe Max wants to develop his hand a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm not really entirely sure how he wants to use Jace here. He does have an Entreat the Angels in his hand, but, you know, the other contents we're not entirely sure of. You know, we could see just Fate Sealing go to work here because Kennen is kind of priced into just drawing a card every turn, so he's got some decisions to make, and we will see what they are.
Kennen is in a tough spot here because even though the Jace tapped out Max and he doesn't have a top on the board anymore, he doesn't have a great answer to Jace the Mind Sculptor. He's really good at fighting against creature decks, but Smallpox, Even Nether Spirit isn't really good against fighting against Jace the Mind Sculptor. A lot of the pieces that he has isn't built to fight Planeswalkers. And so Max is going to proceed with his turn, thinking about how he wants to go about using the Jace, and he decides to use the 0 ability with the Brainstorm, finds a Terminus, as well as a fetch land among the cards on top of his library. Max is going to put 2 cards back. Entreat the Angels is second to bottom.
His hand's actually not all that impressive right now. Unfortunately for Kennen, he is just still a little ways away from assembling the Dark Depths combo, which is one of the more important things that he can do right now. So he's going to start by entombing yet again and reveal a top. Haha.
Yes, and that's going to counter the Entomb, and the remaining 4 cards in Kennen's hand are lands.
Yep. Dredging Loam is where Kennen's going to start. This should be interesting. There's another Dark Depths.
And a Thespian stage.
All right.
So we have the combo in hand. We can't counter the life from the loam. So if Max doesn't have one of the aforementioned million outs or a Jace in play, I suppose.
Well, I mean, the thing about Jace is it's not really going to matter too much because you just make a token in turn and then attack your opponent. So the unsummoned part of it is not really going to actually come up. You know, he's going to be able to resolve Loam. He gets his lands back because the top card there for the counterbalance is Sensei's Divining Top. So he's going to put Dark Depths into play. Now, of course, he doesn't have to worry about Wasteland for Miracles, as that's not a card that they often play. So right now, again, there's 7 cards that he's worried about. Terminus on top of the deck, that's just a 3 of. 2 copies of Swords of Plowshares and 2 copies of Venser.
There's another top. Kennen Haas has to now contend with the lock once again. Max is going to use the Sensei's Divining Top.
Now, don't get me wrong. Kennen's going to have to get
he's gonna
really...
use the Jace. I apologize.
Kennen's going to have to get really lucky to win this game.
Yes.
You know, he has to fade these out. You see a Terminus that is in Max's hand, so he's able to actually put this back. Now, you know, maybe the thought process is, okay, well, maybe he can exhaust, you know, Max's answers to these cards. I'm not entirely sure how true that actually is. But if you're Max, you have to worry about really one thing, which is just a 2020 and how you're going to deal with it.
And Kennen has the reusable engine of Life from the Loam, so he's going to be able to try to assemble the 2020 combo every 3rd turn or so.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that, I think the likelihood of that is pretty low, again, just because of the counterbalance top lock of actually resolving Loam is going to be pretty difficult to do this game, so it's kind of a one-shotter with a 2020.
Max is going to have to just end up getting about 8 lands in play before he can try to start winning the game, although the headlock is going to be put into place as we see Max cast a Vendilion Click in Kennen's draw step.
Yeah, this one's a little bit interesting, actually. Again, you're playing against a deck that has a ton of lands, and you can't actually take a land with Vendilion Click, so... You know, he's not going to get a spell. This feels to me as though Max is not very familiar with the deck that he's playing against right now. If you're draw stepping Vendilion Click against Kennen's deck, he's been dredging Loam a bunch. You have to believe that he doesn't have, you know, a lot of spells in his deck. And lastly, you know, you've got the top plus counterbalance lock in place. So whatever he casts is you're probably gonna be able to counter, especially when you have a fetch land out there.
Yeah, and the land that Max has in play is the fetch land, and he put the 2 miracles back on top of his deck, so he would have to shuffle away both of those if he wanted to take anything, or if he wanted to counter anything. Vendilion Click elects to not take the Smallpox from Kennen's hand of 6 lands Smallpox. So Kennen proceeds with his turn. Thinking about trying to cast that Smallpox before
I'm fine with that.
So both players will have to resolve that spell in order. Sometimes it's relevant, whether you sacrifice the creature first or the land first or discard first, things like that. So the players are also going to lose 1 life each. Max falls to 16, Kennen to 18.
And don't forget, Haas does have out there that copy of Urborg in play, so he's able to play Thespian Sage, and Dark Depths can actually tap for mana. I know at the bottom there, it's a little bit of glare on the Urborg. It's the only land, so Stage is going to come into play, and now Kennen can actually threaten to make a 20/20, and it looks like Ansbro doesn't know the interaction that he can actually use Arid Mesa for mana. He can tap it for a black mana to be able to top at the end of turn. Looks like he may have missed a look there, but he's just going to draw his card and use Jace.
So he's going to use Jace, probably putting the Terminus back on top, possibly the Entreat the Angels if he wants to go about blocking it for a couple turns, see if Kennen can add some more permanents to the board or try to add some more spells before he goes for the Terminus. But I would not be surprised to see the Terminus be the card on top of his library.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Max doesn't make any crazy moves here, he should be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a second top on Max's side of the board.
Yeah, and if you're Kennen, you don't have a choice. You have to just go for this and gamble, for lack of a better term, and just hope your opponent doesn't have anything, even though, the opponent has spun tops a bunch of times and, chased a bunch, has fetched lands.
Right.
You don't really have, you're just at the mercy. Yeah, you don't have the options.
So there is the Merit Lage token, 2020 flying, indestructible. The one in play, of course, is Jerry Thompson for winning the Invitational. He got to choose his own token. And that card has been seeing a lot more play in recent months.
Yeah, we've seen a lot more copies of Dark Depths out there than I thought we would this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry Thompson must have known something that we didn't.
He often does.
That's fair. It did get into the red zone, but then Terminus placed it on the bottom of Kennen's deck, so that's not gonna do it yet for Kennen, so he's gonna have to try again. Life from the Loam on the stack now, and Max is going to use the top to see if he can deftly counter that. He finds 2 1-drops and a X equals 3. Entreat the Angels on top.
Yeah. Again, the problem here is the third card that Max is able to find. Entreat the Angels, that's fine. Of course, it can provide a clock to actually get this game over with. And not being able to counter Loam at this point is fine. But again, if you don't counter Loam, that doesn't matter as long as you find an answer to the 2020, which he actually is able to find, the third card being Swords to Plowshares. So not the end of the world, as Kennen's going to try to rebuild a copy of Dark Depths and get the Avatar in play, but Swords to Plowshares blows that up.
And so Jace once again brainstorming, trying to dig into more lands, just trying to get as much mana in play as he can, dig as deep in his deck as he can, trying to get a 2 on top of his deck to be able to stop the Loam engine so that he can effectively stop 2020s from coming into play at every third turn or so, maybe fourth turn, depending on how often the Life from the Loam resolves and is countered.
You see a dredge here from the Loam, but while Kennen is turning over cards and putting them in his graveyard, one thing that he did write in his report for filling in on the Leaving Legacy column on Star City a couple weeks ago is just how he thinks that Blue-White Miracles is arguably one of the worst matchups for this deck, might even be worse than his combo matchups, just because they have so many different ways to try to beat you. And basically what he said is, the fact that a lot of people aren't playing this deck right now is actually favorable for him, which is definitely true. Now, that being said, this matchup, which he's run into right now, is an absolute nightmare.
Absolutely. As we see an end of turn, activating top for Entreat the Angels, Max is using the Miracle trigger and putting it on the stack to respond to that, to use his fetch lands to find more lands. I believe that's what Max and Kennen are discussing right now.
That is correct. The old Joe Lissette trick. Basically, he's the person I associate with miracles the most, and what you're able to do is you're actually able to flip over your card, trigger a miracle. When you do that, the miracle actually goes onto the stack. The card is actually in your hand, which is a little bit strange even though it's in play. But once the miracle trigger goes on the stack, you can respond by fetching out lands, and then you're able to actually pay for the miracle. So that's exactly what he's doing after he does fetch out lands. He's going to make 3 4/4 Angels.
And he's going to try to end this game. Instead of making it drag on too long, he can just put 12 power into play.
Yeah.
Even if Kennen decides to make a 20/20 to block, then the Jace is going to be able to bounce it.
Yes, he's going to have to take 12 on the chin if they all come across. That's just how things are going to work. Absolutely. You see 3 4/4s are going to come into play. It's Entreat is actually one of the cards I really like about this deck because this deck doesn't really have great closing speed. It takes forever to actually win the game. However, Entreat does give it a way to win the game. Also, there are some things that come along with Entreat as far as surprise blockers go, and having a 3-mana spell to reveal the counterbalance, which a lot of the times back in the day you had to play Trinket Mage and other kind of rubbish cards.
Sure. Max deciding if he wants to go with 2 or 3 Angels, sort of perhaps giving away that he doesn't have a great answer to a potential 20/20 in his hand, elects to go for all 12 damage, putting Kennen down to 6.
Well, we know that's not the truth.
Right.
Because he has the swords in his hand.
He does have a swords in his hand, but that would put Kennen to 26, meaning the clock would be a lot longer.
Yeah, I mean, a lot longer, but also Kennen has nothing.
Yes.
So, yes, Kennen will go to 26, and then 3 attacks or 4 attacks, which is basically in the game. So, sure, he'll get to play a couple turns, but that just means he gets to mess around with his Jace for a couple more turns.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
who doesn't want to do that?
And oh, by the way, we put a counterbalance on top, finally putting a 2-drop on top and putting a top in play to be able to get the counterbalance lock to be able to counter the Life from the Loams whenever he needs to. And so once again, Thespian Stage and Dark Depths interact with each other to create the 20/20, thanks to the new Legend rule that came about last summer.
Kennen's going, yeah, you just attacked with 2 of the Angels, right? You just completely messed up, or
yeah, what's the deal?
Yeah. Oh, Venser.
Oh, it's Venser instead. And that is actually going to not allow Kennen to draw a bunch of lands.
So, okay.
Or to gain a bunch of life.
So you can, I'm going to make this argument for argument's sake, but he had a Swords and a Venser in his hand, and so Swords is the more commonly played card in these decks than Venser is. So if I max, I kind of want to show him Swords there and put him up to 26 because I've basically got the game won. I have another Entreat that's on top of my deck that I'm going to Miracle, and I'm going to win the game in 3 turns versus, I have Venser in my deck, which is, kind of played. Sometimes it's a one of, sometimes it's a none of, and I can use that as kind of like a secret bait card maybe.
Sure.
You can get a little bit more fancy here by showing him Swords, which is commonly played, Venser, which isn't commonly played. Now the other side of the argument is, well, yeah, you just Venser the token, you kill him next turn, so we can just get the game over with. But I really like concealing information, especially something that's as unique as Venser, where that's something that is kind of going to be in Kennen's radar now. So at the end of the day, it probably is not going to end up mattering, but I don't know, just something to think about.
Absolutely. As we start looking at sideboards, Kennen's sideboard has changed a little bit since last we saw him. He does have copies of Abrupt Decay now to be able to deal with counterbalance.
A lot of people are recommending that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You among them.
I thought his weaknesses to Rest in Peace were pretty real. I know he did beat it a lot in Indianapolis when he did win the Legacy Open there. That being said, I've played the deck a little bit online, and when someone has Rest in Peace against you, your deck's not
pretty
fun.
bad.
Yeah, it's not fun anymore.
Most of your cards don't do much.
That too, yeah.
He also has 4 copies of Thoughtseize. I believe that will be coming in as well.
Yes, because in a matchup that is kind of hopeless like this, you do have to get a little bit lucky. So Thoughtseize maybe does need to tag. God, there are so many cards. A Balance, a Top, a Terminus, a Swords, a Venser. There are so many cards Thoughtseize has to tag.
Pretty much any Thoughtseize in the opening hand is a good Thoughtseize.
Yeah, he's probably going to have to keep that hand, so.
And 2 Pithing Needles also in Kennen's sideboard.
I like that one a lot. Now, that one's going to be working overtime, too. It's likely going to be naming Top a high percentage of the time. Could also see it named Caracas as well. He has to bring it in, and it's not very exciting in the matchup, but he doesn't have much of a choice.
And it's not a bad top deck either. Like, at random times, if he top decks a Pithing Needle, it could name a Jace randomly. Yeah. And so that's a reasonable card to be able to bring in. And he's got a couple of cards that he wants to, for sure, side out, like Punishing Fire, for example.
Unsurprisingly, his deck is not going to have anything, his sideboard's not going to have anything that says, I'm here for the counterbalance matchup because I don't want to lose this deck because, 1, the matchup is pretty bad for him anyway, and 2, the deck is not seeing a lot of play right now. We're not on the West Coast. You're not going to be in the area of, again, Joe Lissette or Michael Hetrick, and it's not a deck that sees a lot of play in the Midwest or on the East Coast. So as a result, again, this is what we call a bad pairing in Magic. And there's not really a ton that he can do about it. As we take a look at Max's sideboard, he's got 2 copies of Red Elemental Blast, 2 Wear and Tear, 2 Enlightened Tutor, 2 Rest in Peace, Humility. This could get kind of ugly. A Pithing Needle.
And a Blood Moon, by the way.
Yeah, he's got a Blood Moon, a Pithing Needle, a Flusterstorm, a Preordain, an Elspeth, Sun's Champion, and a Nethersworn Cannon. Yes, that's Sun's Champion, not Knight Errant.
Wow.
Which is a little bit surprising. Sometimes, Ruben, you need a 6 for counterbalance.
That's a fair point.
I'm trying to think of the 6 that you counter with the
Time
counterbalance.
Spiral.
Yes.
There it is.
Nicely done.
We did it.
I couldn't think of one. All right. Sure. I like it.
Sometimes you have to counter a Worm Coil Engine.
Boom. Get that out of here. I guess that's easy playing mud decks sometimes.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes you do need a 6. But of these cards that are important, Humility, that's one. Nice 2020. Nice Jerry Thompson. He's a 1/1. Don't tell Jerry he's a 1/1.
Well, he's a 1/1 on his other token.
Yeah, but he doesn't like that token.
Sure.
That token.
But he
that's
is a 1/1
That's
on
not
that
what we
token.
think of for Jerry. We think of the 2020.
That's fine.
Yeah.
He's actually the black token. So if you have a Humility in play, the Merit Lage Jerry becomes the black token Jerry.
That's true.
So that's a nice little...
I don't know if we have that Jerry token over there. We might need it later.
We might.
Blood Moon obviously is going to shut down a lot of what Kennen's trying to do. And then, of course, Pithing Needle. Well, we just saw Kennen activate Thespian Sage twice in this game. So there's that. Wait, hold on. I have to think. Pithing Needle can name a land and...
And yes.
Revoker cannot.
And Revoker cannot.
Okay,
Well, Revoker can counter mana abilities on things like Elvish Archdruid, whereas Pithing Needle can name Mutavault.
Yeah, okay, yes, because I've had my Mutavault Pithing Needle a million times, so never mind. Okay, got it.
He also has Enlightened Tutor in the sideboard, so all these enchantments and artifacts that he's bringing in, he's effectively running 3 copies of.
Yep, if he does want to bring those in. And I guess, I kind of overlooked Rest in Peace, but it's so obvious at this point that he's going to bring it in.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was worth highlighting too much.
We're already bringing in these 4 cards that are huge daggers to Kennen's deck, and then he's also got these Rest in Pieces.
Yeah, and those Enlightened Tutors to search for him. So as far as, really bad matchups go...
Yeah, you think this is one of them?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if Kennen can dig his way out as he is at 6-1 looking for another top 8. His second top 8 in Legacy Opens in the last 3 Opens.
Yeah, that's his goal.
That's right, and he did not attend Orlando, so this is going for 2 for 2 in 2014. And he's going to lead with Mox Diamond removing Dark Depths, as well as, looks like Faithless Looting is probably going to be the play here.
Thumbs up here from Max. So this is a pretty decent start here, depending on what Kennen does put in his graveyard. But truthfully, when you're in this situation, when you're in a really bad matchup and you're just trying to get a little lucky and get there, you're going to have to keep some riskier hands. You know you need to get up to an explosive start. And, just really you have to hope things break your way and kind of cross your fingers. That's honestly all you can do.
I think that the Ravens crime plan is certainly what he's hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, there is that plan, but again, there's just pretty easy ways to work around a counterbalance top. Actually, just playing the card Sensi's Divining Top is actually good here because it'll let you actually, smooth your draw steps while the hand is being attacked. Because as we do know with discard spells, you can't stop the top of their deck, and Sensi's Divining Top allows you to control it. As Thespian Stage going to come into play.
Yep, Thespian Stage enters the battlefield, and Raven's Crime and Life from the Loam go to the graveyard for Kennen. Max Brown simply plays out a fetch land before passing. He has Spell Pierce in his hand, and Life from the Loam gets the Dredge Party started. 2 Thoughtseizes and another Life from the Loam.
See, Kennen has a Wasteland in his hand. Of course, is not going to do anything with that Flooded Strand. Wouldn't be surprised to see Max just search up a basic with the Flooded Strand as well. Might want to cast the Loam here. It does have a Thoughtseize. That's actually not so bad. Looks like it might fire off a Spell Pierce.
Yep, Thoughtseize is going to trade with the Spell Pierce, and that's probably going to allow Kennen to resolve the Life from the Loam, should he so choose to cast it here.
Except for, I don't think he can, because he only has one source of colored mana, and it's the Mox Diamond.
Yeah. Didn't have the other dual land in hand, only has the Mox Diamond for colored mana here. And so plays out the Wasteland, and with 2 mana, 2 colorless mana, not really going to be able to do much with that, and he's probably going to have to pass it back to Max here.
Now, the one thing here is that he could have played around Spell Pierce if he would have played the land first and then cast the Thoughtseize. So that might have been a blunder on his side. We'll end up seeing how, that kind of shapes the game.
And here we see Life from the Loam being dredged again, and that's going to reveal. Looks like Entomb, a Bloodstained Mire, and a Verdant Catacombs. So we got some targets for our Life from the Loam. Life from the Loam probably going to eat a counter spell here.
Oh, wow, it's actual counter spell.
Actual counter spell. Blast from the Past.
I think if you're Kennen, you don't really care about that. Like, it's fine, and it's a little bit annoying because you'd like to be able to get your cards back. Now, this only gets really bad if, like, Rest in Peace comes and takes all these cards away. But I think overall you're okay with these exchanges at this point. You're not thrilled, but you're also not panicking yet.
Yep. Max's hand includes a Jace, several lands, and an Entreat the Angels. He just drew Swords to Plowshares.
And Max's hand is actually pretty weak right now. He's got Jace, he's got Swords, and he doesn't really have very much else. I mean, the Entreat's not really going to be that big of a deal. So
Kennen drew Crop Rotation. He does have the other copy of Life from the Loam in his hand, and that is what he's going to cast here.
Well, same targets.
Same targets, Dark Depths among them, alongside Verdant Catacombs and Bojuka Bog. Going back to Kennen's hand. Kennen now flush with cards. That's how the engine works, is he turns the Life from the Loam lands into not only land drops, but also other cards like Raven's Crime and Liliana of the Veil working well with Life from the Loam.
Yeah, you might see him start going to the hand here, and that's part of the reason that Max likely was fighting over this Life from the Loam, is because there is Raven's Crime in the graveyard, so we will attempt to start making Max discard some cards. The tough part here, of course, is that because of Jace and top and things of that nature, Max can really control the cards that he's discarding, hide the real cards on top of his deck, and when it's time to use them, he can actually do that.
And there we are, discarding Bojuka Bog to cast Raven's Crime, targeting Max. Raven's Crime is a common from Eventide and also was reprinted in the recent Modern Masters. It's pretty much the only card with Retrace that you see anymore.
Poor Retrace.
Yeah, not a lot of Flame Jabs, not a lot of Worm Harvests.
No.
Floating around.
Nope.
Have you ever called the Skybreaker?
I tried to make that card work a bunch. It's not good.
It's not good?
It's not good.
Well, in this deck, being a 1-mana spell that's able to trade lands for cards in your opponent's hand, it's exactly what Life from the Loam decks want.
Yeah. I would have liked to make those cards. And those are the kind of cards I'm kind of drawn to because I like Loam engines and strategies a lot, and I like to use my graveyard as an extension of my hand. Part of the reason I played Dredge a few years ago. It kind of stinks that Retrace was just never as great as maybe people wanted it to be. Even though, to be fair, we did see Bronson Magnan win a Grand Prix with basically a Retrace Loam deck in Grand Prix Lincoln a couple of years back. 2
plains and 2 islands combine to make Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Good card. Better than all.
Better than all,
Yep.
some have said.
Yeah.
Jace the Mind Sculptor was fairly ubiquitous in Legacy even as most recently as 4 months ago, but in the last couple months we haven't seen as many, what with the advent of True Name Nemesis, and even before that, even more just random aggressive decks. There was a brief resurgence for Rug Delver that sort of kept it off the map. Elves came back for a little while, and Jace the Mind Sculptor just hasn't been as popular as it used to be.
Yeah, I think we're going to see less Jaces overall in the coming months here, simply because of True Name Nemesis and how it interacts favorably against Jace. I mean, don't get me wrong, Jace still has the ability to dominate a game, and it is my belief that if Jace is in play for 2 turns or more, you cannot possibly win.
Yep.
That being said, it will see less play until some things kind of change around it, and I think that thing is getting True Name Nemesis in check. True Name Nemesis is starting to dominate a little bit, but as people figure out creative ways to actually go about beating it and consistent ways to do it, then Jace can kind of take back over again.
Dark Depths comes down for Kennen, who now has Dark Depths Thespian Stage available to him, should he so choose to use it. He also has Raven's Crime and a crop rotation in hand.
I greatly enjoy how once Dark Depths and Thespian Stage is on the table, it's just like, hey, you better watch out.
Just looming.
I'm going to make a 2020, man.
Yeah, this is just in the distance, the train coming in the distance, and you're tied to the train tracks. You have to figure out a way out of it before it completely takes over. Fortunately for Max, he has many options on how to be able to correctly handle a 2020 indestructible flyer that most decks have a lot of trouble with. His not so much.
Yeah, the fair decks of the format are actually having a lot of trouble, kind of beating this thing, because again, Kennen's tools and his game plan against a lot of the fair decks and True Name Nemesis decks is actually quite good. Punishing Fire is good against, one half of their threats. Smallpox and Leon is good against the other half. However, this particular deck, which is fair, does not care about the cards that I've just mentioned.
Right.
So as a result, the only thing that Kennen can really do to try to win is to cobble together the old 2020, which again, this deck really does not care about.
Yeah, and he doesn't have the quickest way to assemble the 2020. We've seen other versions of the Thespian Stage Dark Depths decks. We saw a Into the North combo version that just tried to slam it into play as quickly as possible. I believe Mike Laugustine's in the room playing that version today. Was X1 last round. I think he picked up a loss.
Okay.
Kennen's deck is even slower at making a token than Todd Anderson's version with Exploration. This is actually perhaps the slowest, most controlling version. And so if you're trying to race a 2020 into play, this is not the version of the deck that you want to be doing it with.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Levin even is working on a version 2 that's green-black that has Right of Consumption, which lets him actually throw the 2020 your way, or Steely Resolve. Yeah, that is a real thing. Steely Resolve, that is a rare from Onslaught.
It is, and you choose a creature type.
Yeah.
Wow.
You choose Jerry.
You choose.
That's the creature type. You choose Jerry Thompson, and it's untargetable. That's what actually happens there.
That's delightful. I like that one.
That is the best word to use. Delightful is, I think, the accurate term. See crop rotation resolving here.
I see a copy of Preordain in Max's hand. That Preordain is not main deck. That Preordain is in the sideboard. That's just to be able to, it's sort of a pseudo Enlightened Tutor, pseudo top to be able to dig him into his 1-ofs and 2-ofs that he wants specifically in matchups.
Abrupt Decay firing off at the top here. I think Kennen's thought process right now is, I believe that the card that you actually have, is like Entreat the Angels or something like that.
Yeah,
or
Entreat the Angels or Terminus on top. And so he's going to try and preempt any of those problems going forward.
Again, this is what happens when you got to get unreal lucky.
Right, and it is Entreat the Angels, and it's going to be an Entreat for 2.
Yeah. You see, he's going to do that, and then because Urborg's in play, he doesn't have to actually sacrifice the fetch land. I always find it quite humorous when someone taps their fetch land for mana, the judge is just like, what are you doing? It's
right.
Just like, yep, I'm just tapping my swamp for a mana.
Yep.
That's all.
Absolutely.
It's guaranteed to happen like every time. Just like, I don't know what you think you're doing. It's like, my opponent has an Urborg.
I mean, there's a lot of magic cards in play. And a lot of them, you don't know what they do.
Yeah.
Legacy is a complicated format, man. Look at this graveyard. If you could tell me all of the little nuances the first time sitting down and watching Jund Depths play, I couldn't do it. All of the different things have different interactions. And there is a shiny Merit Lage. We're going to get the right Merit Lage token in play, at least for the time being.
Kennen, draw Shizo.
Yes.
Draw Shizo.
Shizo Death Storehouse.
It's not in his deck.
It isn't.
Draw it anyway.
Unfortunately, the fear-granting land from Kamigawa is not in Kennen's deck.
We can bring Shizo up. Shizu doesn't get a lot of camera time here.
No, but it is a good way of dealing with flying blockers like Bitter Blossom tokens.
Narcomoeba?
Yeah. Instead of having to swat away random Narcomoebas and fairies,
boom.
you just give them the fear.
Get your Shizos today, ladies and gentlemen.
There's a 4/4 White Angel, which if the 2020 had fear, the Angel would have been afraid. But instead, it just got thrown under the tires.
Do you think that WotC knew when they printed Shizo that it would work with Dark Depths?
Absolutely.
That's just bad design.
Right.
We can't have combos like this just running around.
I know. It's very depressing. Well, Jerry Thompson stumbles over an Angel, not able to take out Max's life total here. Life from the Loam, going to be able to target some lands to be able to regrow the combo because the Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to be able to bounce it next turn.
Yep, and that's this is kind of a repeat of what we saw game 1 where he has to keep trying to regrow the combo. Again, Max has Jason play, it's going to take care of the first one. I think he has a Swords of Plowshares in hand, which can take care of the second one. Yes, it's going to gain Kennen 20 life, but in the meantime, Jace is going to be just brainstorming along the entire time. And again, it kind of sucks if you're a fan of the Jund Depths deck because this is arguably the worst possible pairing for the deck.
Yep. So there is an answer for the 2020 in play. Then the Angel can start going to work because the combo will only be able to be assembled every third turn. And so then the Angel will be able to go under the tires again. Jace will be able to bounce it again. Then there's a Swords to Plowshares in hand. By which point, I'm sure Max will have drawn another spell of some kind.
Yep.
And many of his spells are very well suited to be able to deal with this matchup.
A little bit of Raven Criming taking place here from Kennen.
And Max decides to get rid of the Preordain. Raven's Crime is really going to increase Kennen's odds of winning, but not to a measurable degree.
See, this is why this matchup is more difficult. You think the combo is the most difficult matchup, but you can actually steal wins against combo decks by making a quick 20-20, and they might not have the appropriate bounce spell, but the density of cards that Max has in his deck to take care of the 20-20 is actually pretty high. When, again, Karakas, Venser, all these other different cards. Additionally, your Raven's Crime Engine that you can try to steal a win with against combo, because, Storm needs a critical mass of cards to go off, or some other combo decks, that's not actually going to work against this deck, because once they have top in play, they can just hide their best card on top, or what we're seeing with Jace is you can just Jace and brainstorm your best cards on top, and it's not going to matter that you don't have any cards in your hand. So, again, that's why this matchup is so very bad, and Kennen knows that, too.
Of course. And he has a copy of Entomb in hand. I'm not sure what he can really Entomb for that's going to...
Shizo.
If he had the Shizo, if he left in the Punishing Fire, he could take out the Jace.
That's true. That's a step.
The odds of the Punishing Fire still being in the deck, of which he only has one main deck and an additional one in the sideboard, are not high. The instances in which the Punishing Fire are good is Venser and Jace that has -1 already.
I figured out how he gets out of this.
Okay.
So he draws Crop Rotation. He attacks with the 20-20. Max tries to Swords it with Crop Rotation for Sajiri Step. Bang. Sajiri Step also, nope, not in his deck.
Also not in his deck.
Not in his deck. Just, again, looking for ways out of this situation for future tournaments.
Sure.
There you go.
Fair enough.
There you go.
You're a savant.
There is a land that can do everything.
That is what grew Knight of the Reliquary's reputation.
Yes.
That there's a land for every occasion.
Yes, there is a land that can get you out of every situation. I can promise you that.
And so Raven's Crime actually takes a Karakas out of Max's hand.
All right.
Which is another way that Max has to deal with the 20-20. He's just getting rid of everything. And now Max is hellbent, still has a Jace in play, and still has a top in play, but it's a start.
I mean, all you can hope for is a start. Now, you see the issue now of Max. Okay, top cards in my deck. Swords, X. So you go ahead, make me discard my hand. That's fine. I'm just going to hide my best card over here to the point where I believe that Max will probably just draw this land. And he's like, yeah, I'll just keep my sword. Yep, play Polluted Delta and keep my swords over here. That's perfectly fine. I don't need these cards. And I can actually start Fate Sealing you if I want to.
Yeah.
He's going to start by spinning top.
Well, the onus is on Kennen now because the 4/4 is going to end this game in very short order.
Yeah.
It's a 4-turn clock, which is a completely reasonable clock against a deck that's going to take 2 or 3 turns to regrow its combo.
Now, all jokes aside, if Kennen had a card like Exploration in play, I think Exploration would actually play a huge role in this deck because it's taking him 2 turns to reassemble the combo. Had he had Exploration in play like Todd has in his version of this deck, I know you sat down with him a little bit earlier today, he could be actually, loan back Depths plus stage and just put them both into play each turn and then crime one of the cards out of his hand. And that could actually be his plan, moving forward, just like make a 20/20 every turn. Because he does it every 2 turns, it actually gives Max the opportunity to like Jace every turn that we're in between that. And that's like a pretty big deal.
The other
getting
card,
a free Jace activation.
The other card in Kennen's corner that certainly can turn a game in his order is Liliana of the Veil, which he did not have an early copy of, and it's not going to do enough now. Although Pithing Needle is going to turn things around for him a little bit.
That's
probably.
not so bad. That's not so bad.
As I mentioned, he's able to turn off the Jace in the mid game after a top deck Pithing Needle. So
yeah, I mean, here's the question: do you turn off the Jace? Do you turn off the top? I actually think you turn off the top, and the reason I think you turn off the top is because he's able to hide cards on top of his deck with the top. So when Kennen makes a token in a turn, Max will just go, all right, activate top, draw swords, kill your guy. And we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out what it's naming. Max is gonna be responding here.
Okay. He's responding with the top,
the needle.
just as you were talking.
So
about.
if he names Jace, yes, he stops him from brainstorming, fate sealing, all of that stuff, and that's fine. But I actually think that you name top in the situation so that what you can do is just dredge loam, put depths into play, make him discard, dredge loam, put stage into play, make him discard, and then go about it that way. That's a way to try to win. And he's actually going to end up naming Jace in the situation. Yeah,
Jace is a scarier looking card in this situation, although for the reasons you just mentioned, perhaps top is the right answer, but 6-1, half dozen the other. Yeah. One of them's probably going to get you.
Just got to draw another needle.
There you go. He does have 2 in the sideboard, and so if he's able to draw the second copy, then things really start to get interesting.
Yeah. We'll see what he's able to find. I mean, he's rebuilding the depths combo slowly but surely.
Yep, Max has hidden 2 Swords to Plowshares on top of his deck. Deciding if he wants to use that Polluted Delta now or just leave those where they are. Looks like he's going to use the Polluted Delta to shuffle away those 2 Swords to Plowshares.
Okay. Now, obviously, Kennen doesn't know that. You guys do at home just like Ruben and I do here in the booth, but this can get a little bit interesting. That seems real risky.
Yep.
It's going to be a brains.
We're going to find Enlightened.
Okay.
We figured it out.
Yep.
So,
real tough guy.
Yeah, tough guy here. Enlightened Tutor's going to search up what appears to be Rest in Peace.
That's a nice Undertaker impersonation.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed.
I'm more the pallbearer in our relationship. You're the main event, and I'm sort of the guy hanging out on the side of the ropes over the sideboard.
I think pallbearer and Undertaker are 50-50 split.
Okay.
Pallbearer does a lot for the Undertaker character.
I try my best.
No, I appreciate it. No, he does good. He holds the urn.
He does.
And everything. He's well dressed like yourself.
Absolutely. Undefeated record at WrestleManias.
I don't know how true that is. Well, the Undertaker's undefeated. I don't know
right,
what
Paul
Bearer's record is.
Sure. And so Max did put the Rest in Peace on top of his deck. And he's going to stack the 2 abilities on Sensei's Divining Top so that he can draw the card and then rearrange the top if he so chooses, although he finds 2 lands, it appears.
All right, so now Kennen's new plan. I have it figured out.
Go on.
That is to spike a Dark Depths.
Okay.
Because I believe the Dark Depths is in his graveyard right now. He has 1 card in his hand. He has Stage in play. And actually, no, he has Stage and Depths in play because the 10 counters obviously is the Depths and you can see the Stage. So, wait a tick.
Wait a second.
He's not dead.
No, he's not dead this turn.
But, yeah, I think Kennen's like, okay, that's fine.
Right. And
but
so
that Angel's going to be on chump blocking duty.
That Angel is on chump blocking duty, and the Jace will bounce it. We'll be back to where we were.
No, but the Jace is needled.
Oh, the Jace is needled. Oh dear. Well, what's happened now?
That's why when
he shuffled away the 2 swords.
That was so surprising.
I see. So perhaps from the jaws of defeat, I believe that Max was so lulled into a false sense of security by his own Enlightened Tutor, getting a Rest in Peace.
I mean, we're not there yet, but
no, we certainly aren't.
And I'm pretty sure
on our way.
I'm pretty sure Max is empty-handed.
I believe so.
I could be wrong about this. I'm going to cast Entomb.
And Entomb is going to get exiled, as is whatever the card that Kennen searches for.
Probably wants to get garbage out of his deck.
Yep, get rid of the Mox Diamond.
All right, that's good.
Thin the deck slightly.
Yeah. I think he's doing this before he draws a card, too.
Yep. See if he can randomly pick up something like a Liliana of the Veil to sacrifice the Angel.
Okay, so he's going to untap. He's going to draw.
Kennen finds himself
Grove.
just a land, but He does have the 20/20, and now the Angel stands in front of the Jerry.
So if Max misses, he dies?
That's right.
Oh, no. And he's got to sacrifice this Misty because he knows his card's on top of his deck, I'm pretty sure.
Well, he's probably going to draw the top, play the top, sacrifice the Misty, and research.
Okay, sure. So he gets to look at a bunch of cards.
So he'll get to look at 4. He'll look at the one that he doesn't know on top right now, because he knows that 2 of them are lands. Then he'll get to shuffle his library and look at 3 more if the Swords to Plowshares or other remaining out isn't there.
All right, sacking Misty. So he does not spin the top first of all, because the 3rd card on the bottom is the new card. And I think he has enough mana to do all those things. But one thing to keep in mind is he has not played land yet for the turn. So if he draws a Caracas, it's a real nice one. He's got 1 left in his deck. He plays 2.
He does have the 1 on the bottom there, as we see in his hand currently.
All right, so he's going to go get Island. So, and again, Misty Rainforest got sacrificed. It was already in play. So that is not his land drop for the turn. So if he draws Caracas off of top, that's going to get the job done to bounce the 20/20. And if he finds a Swords or a Venser or something, that's going to get the job done. Jace is locked down by Needle. So, Kennen, give it a good shuffle, brother.
There you go, yeah. As we've reached time in the round for the non-camera matches, we are reaching the 5-minute mark here. We're probably going to be unable to finish a 3rd game between these two. See if Kennen can get himself a draw, but looks like we found Venser Shaper Savant, which is not going to be quite friendly for Kennen.
Daggers all around.
Yep. And so Kennen is going to draw for the turn. He is going to find, I think that was Nether Spirit, and in comes the 20/20. Max decided to wait until the last possible second to be able to do this trick, and he's going to play himself Venser Shaper Savant to bounce the 20/20 back to Kennen's hand.
Yeah, all you can do is shrug.
Yep. Kennen waits for the target just in case. Venser targets the token, and Kennen can only pass. And now death by 2/2 rather than 4/4 is on the menu.
That's the way we're going.
Kennen down to 13. That rest in peace is still in play. And he can only pass back.
Man,
so Max did make it pretty exciting, though.
If Kennen would have stole this game and gotten a draw out of this matchup, I'm not going to say I would do a cartwheel, but that would have been really impressive, I'm going to say.
I would have liked a round off or a somersault of some kind.
Yeah, something of that nature. You see it in Tomb here.
Yep.
Going to thin out his deck again by taking a card out because, again, Rest in Peace being in play means the card's going to get exiled, but he's just trying to increase the chances of him getting a real card with his draw
and he's
stuff.
looking for what's going to be relevant here, and it's basically boiled down to 4 copies of Liliana, the other Pithing Needle maybe shutting off the top, as well as Nether Spirit to just trade with the Venser.
Yeah, that's really about it.
Not many cards left in Kennen's deck. Most of them are still lands or things that interact with his graveyard, and so the Rest in Peace is still quite a powerful card. Looks like the second Pithing Needle is the card that came off the top.
That's not so bad.
So that's going to be able to name the top. Once it resolves, of course, Max has a chance to respond.
Yeah.
It's an as it comes in trigger, and so top will resolve first. He sees Brainstorm land Terminus.
Gonna sacrifice the fetch land, get better cards.
Yep.
Probably just looking for an Entreat.
Looking for pretty much anything at that point.
Blood Moon would be good too.
Yep, decides to find the Volcanic Island in case he draws the Blood Moon later. Again, this is blue-white control, pretty standard, but he does have room for 2 Volcanic Island for just the Blood Moon out of the sideboard. Some versions of this deck also run Engineered Explosives. This version just Wear and Tear and Blood Moon in the sideboard. And so Max is going to draw a card with his top. And cast Vendilion Click.
All right.
So that's going to speed up the clock by a turn, maybe 2. And he's going to target Kennen. He sees a Mox Diamond, which is a legal card for Max to put on the bottom of Kennen's library, but he's going to let him keep it there.
Surprise, surprise, you can keep that.
So 2 legendary blue wizards on the battlefield. Needle does, in fact, name top, by the way. In come the 5 power of blue creatures. A top that doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, I mean, probably better served in his hand in case he draws a Brainstorm, but I think it's pretty minor at this point.
Kennen finds Faithless Looting to be able to try and dig into something at this point.
You're only going to get a 1-shot with the looting, doesn't get to flash it back.
and finds 2 lands instead. He probably would have needed running Lilianas on back-to-back turns to be able to...
Something crazy like that is the only way he's going to get himself back into this one, and it does not look like it's going to come to fruition.
Nope. Kennen's hand right now is Mox Diamond, Grove of the Burnt Willows, and a fetch land. 2 of those hit the bin, so Grove of the Burnt Willows, the last card in Kennen's hand. Attack you for 5, put you to 1, and now Liliana's not even an out.
So Kennen gets one more draw, and he's going to extend the hand. So Max Ansbro is going to win this match over Kennen Haas, giving Kennen his 2nd loss and probably no repeat title here. Ansbro can win a 6-1-1 with Blue-White Miracles.